everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. There's a little chill in the air today.
It's a little cool.
A little cool.
But cool.
September, that's expected.
That comes.
But oh gosh, wonderful time of year. A lot of the annual flowers still look great.
Yep.
Hang baskets look good. And I'm excited because the squash are developing nice. And of course, They can withstand frost. No hurry to pick the winter type squash. And pumpkins are getting bigger, turning orange. And gosh, potato digging season will be pretty soon. And so a wonderful time of year. I love the shortening days, the shadows get a little longer, and I enjoy this time of year. How about you? How's everything doing in your yard, John?
It's good. I've got a question for you, though. I'm concerned about my tomatoes. I still have a lot of tomatoes that are very green, that have not yet turned. They're good to a good size, but they're not turning. And at least for the next week here, it's not going to be too warm.
Exactly. I made the chill in the air sound kind of romantic and fallish.
It's nice. I don't mind it.
Tomatoes don't like that.
No.
Tomatoes like nice, consistent warmth. And when the nighttime temperatures get below 50, then tomatoes start not doing as well. They'd like nice, warm evening temperatures, night temperatures, as well as during the day. And so there's a certain point at which the little green tomatoes that are starting to form are not going to make it.
Yeah.
And so that's a good kind of a good signal that for many of the indeterminate tomatoes that keep growing and growing and growing, at a certain point, and now is that point, we may as well cut off that top vining part.
Okay.
Any blossoms that are starting to form, they're not likely to ripen in time.
Okay.
Cherry tomatoes, maybe yes, but not the full-size tomatoes. So good time to prune the top of those indeterminate tomatoes so that any energy now will go into ripening those that are already big enough.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, but Mother Nature is in control on this.
Is there a way to ripen them? You hear sometimes people will put them in paper bags or leave them on a windowsill if they're fully formed but not yet turning color and ripening. Can you still ripen them off of the vine?
There's some good research on that. And, I know my mom used to set them on the windowsill, but actually the research shows that they will ripen better in the dark.
Oh,
like in a grocery bag, a paper grocery type bag. And for them to continue on to ripeness, they have to be full size. And it's best if they've started to get a hint of pink to them.
Okay.
Not full pink, but at least a little bit of pink, and then they will continue on to ripeness. Might not be quite as good as vine ripen, but they will do that. But if it has not fully sized, those will not continue to size up and ripen. So it kind of depends. But yeah, a little bit of, how a tomato starts getting that kind of, they go from greenish to kind of that starting to look like they're a little pink blush, then those should continue to ripen.
So just look for the blush.
Yes. But, if they start forecasting a one-time frost overnight, many of us are out there with a flashlight at night, Mary holding the flashlight, and I'm putting the old sheet over the tomatoes. That works too.
All right. Well, we've got a special guest today, Luke Nygard from Nygard Nursery is here. But before we talk to him, you've got a question from a listener.
Yes, and I'm sure, Luke, you've heard this one before. A listener wrote in, and they didn't include their name with it, but that's okay. So I'll call you the hydrangea person out there. So thanks again for listening. Thanks for writing. And the question was, I planted a hydrangea, but all the blossoms are flopping over. It almost looks like the blossoms are too heavy for the plant. Did I prune it wrong? What can I do to prevent this? And she sent a very nice photo. It's a panicle type hydrangea, the type with the pyramidal cone-shaped type flowers, and it looks relatively youngish. I'm kind of guessing it was maybe planted within the last 2 years. So a couple of things I noticed. And yes, they are flopping over. I've gotten a number of emails about hydrangeas kind of plopping over. We'd like them to stand nice and erect so that the blossoms show up instead of laying kind of more on the ground. Okay, well, two things. Hydrangeas, including the panicle type, do take a number of years for the stems to get firm enough to support those nice, big, heavy flowers. So patience. takes probably 3 to 4 years for a panicle type hydrangea to really develop the stem and branch strength. So don't be discouraged. Pruning on panicle type hydrangeas. Now, the Annabelle type hydrangea with the big round blossoms, big round white blossoms, those come back near ground level each year. So in the early spring, you cut them back, maybe around 6 inches above ground level. They grow and bloom from there. The panicle type, the cone-shaped blossoms, you prune those like you would what I call a normal shrub. They don't die all the way back. So in the spring of the year, you can limit the pruning to only taking off the old dead dry blossoms, or those could be taken off even in the fall of the year if you wish. So the pruning, just take off the old blossoms on this panicle type. And in time, it is going to develop structure. One thing I do notice, though, is that it is surrounded by rock mulch. Shredded bark mulch is much more plant-friendly than the heavy heat-capturing rock mulch. So I would pull back at least a 3, maybe a 4-foot diameter circle of the rock and replace it with the wood mulch. And I think your hydrangea is well on its way. It looks quite healthy. Pull back the rock, put wood mulch, give it some time, and I think those blossoms will standing up just nice and sturdy the way you'd like.
Well, and also with that, with having the rock mulch there, you wonder too if there's a poly underneath, and the poly, will probably, it doesn't allow as much surface space for for watering too. That you maybe want to pull back the poly when you pull back the rock mulch there.
That's right, and boy, anytime I lift a bucket of rocks, it amazes me the weight of that. And when that's distributed, many buckets of rock distributed over that root system, over time it really does compress, squish out all the air, especially in heavy clay soil. And so mulch is much more friendly. And Luke, by the way, thank you, hydrangea person, for writing in on that. We love it. And Luke, I'm sure you encounter these hydrangeas like this many times. So welcome, Luke Nygard from Nygard Nursery.
What a treat. Thank you guys for having me.
So Nygard Nursery it's called the Rail District in Dilworth, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and you've been open there 2 or 3 years.
This is our second summer open there.
Okay. How are you liking it out there? It's I really like that area. It's kind of a nice, it's kind of a downtown field, kind of in the middle of a field. You got a coffee shop there. You've got restaurants. You've got a great butcher there. And
along Highway 10, just kind of west of the west part of Dilworth.
Yeah.
No, excuse me, not west, east.
Yep.
East part, get my directions right, the east part of Dilworth. Mary and I drove out there over the Labor Day weekend, and that is really a nice development.
It is really
You've done
neat.
a great job in a relatively short time of constructing the nursery there.
And it's fun to see the nursery there because you've got all these shops, and then it allows people to maybe spend a little bit more time out there by going across the street and going over to the nursery. You've got how many greenhouses there?
We have 6 houses set up for retail sales, as well as a nice tree area. And then my brother and I built some really nice wooden capture devices for our shrubs, because one of the things that I didn't anticipate being on the edge of town like that was the wind, and the wind is nuts out there.
Yeah.
So I would come in every morning that first spring, and my beautiful shrubs were scattered about. So learning on the fly has been an incredibly important thing. And luckily, my brother and I grew up in Hewlin-Hitterdal on a hobby farm. So we learned a lot of neat skills as far as fixing things and building things. So we were able to come up with some inexpensive, nice ways to hold those shrubs and showcase them, as well as just do other fixing things on the grounds themselves and make it a really nice, special place.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, like your experiences growing up. And did you grow up? You said a hobby farm. Like what kind of stuff did you grow out there or raise? And then when did you get involved in gardening yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hewlin-Hitterdal. Well, not in Hewlin-Hitterdal, a hobby farm north of Holly, outside of Hewlin and Hitterdal. And my grandpa was the one that got me into it. We had a really cool windmill. And every spring he would come and visit us, and he would take me out, and we would go visit the little local hoop houses where they'd set them up in the parking lot. And we would pick out something fun. We'd try bare root roses, and we'd just grab a ton of flowers, nicotianas, and all these just fun, whimsical things. we were frugal, but we'd just pick out some stuff and have some fun. And then we would go plant that windmill every spring. And then all summer he'd ask, what's going on with this? And just keep me excited about it. And then that transformed with having a hobby farm where we had a nice big garden every year. Speaking of the squashes and the things like that, with the cool temperatures, I myself am getting excited for the first post-frost carrot,
Yes.
which is the best carrot in the whole wide world. Wipe a little dirt off on the jeans and have a bite.
That is fine dining.
I agree. That is the best. So yeah, that was the beginning. My grandpa got me excited, but our family, we did do gardening and had chickens and, that whole really fun hobby farm experience.
And so now I know you haven't spent your entire, adult working career here in the garden center business. So tell us what you were doing before you started Nygard Nursery.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be a musician in a local band, 32 Below. We played over much of the upper Midwest, and it was just a really fun way to get to see all sorts of different places and meet tons of different people and just enjoy the amazing upper Midwest. It was an awesome, amazing experience.
Yeah, you must spend a lot of time on the road.
Yeah, it was neat. So I joined those guys when they were living down in Nashville. So I was able to live down there, and they had all those beautiful blue hydrangeas and stuff like that we don't get to have here. And it was neat seeing the different places. We played down south a lot and seeing how different and amazing some of their landscapes were.
And now I can see being a musician meshing very well with being a garden center owner, a horticulture person. I can see that meshing. The creativity, working with music, designing landscapes, creating flower beds, creating hanging baskets that go together well. So I see the two of those meshing really, really well.
And also the timing. You got to know when to have something ready, when something's going to be coming in, when to move on something, and yeah.
And also, of course, being a musician, being in a band requires a certain amount of business expertise. So have you found that has helped too with the business part of being a nurseryman?
Absolutely. We were a very well-run business, and we've always been super proud of that. So being able to have that previous experience of running QuickBooks and keeping track of my numbers and what our labor is and everything has definitely helped us be more successful quicker so that we can hopefully continue to offer some unique things that we're planning on. We're able to do some interesting stuff that if I wasn't diligent and frugal, we wouldn't be able to have the opportunity to try.
Tell us about some of those things. What types of plant services does Nygard offer? Yeah,
we do planting. I just came back yesterday from a beautiful beet field where I put some really nice crabapple trees in. So we do offer planting. We don't do hardscapes or landscaping, but we call it plantscaping. We also offer custom container gardening. It took me a minute to spit that out, so forgive me. But we offer custom container gardening, and we just are a full suit of every plant imaginable.
So trees and shrubs, perennial flowers?
Absolutely.
Annual flowers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any annual flowers that kind of especially have caught your eye that you've handled?
Yes.
And that customers have
Funny
loved?
enough, listening to one of your recent episodes with Mary Holm,
yeah.
She talked about Tithonia, Mexican sunflower. And that is one that I've grown myself for many years. And that is one that we offered this year for the first time. And I was tickled when you guys chatted about that because in my own garden, we mix a lot of perennials as well as pollinator plants within the tomatoes and everything, because I think I like having the beauty of it, but I like having all of the bees and the butterflies and everything doing all the work for me. So when you guys had mentioned that one, the Mexican sunflower is one of my most favorite plants that turns into a beautiful 5-foot shrub-like ever blooming sunflower that brings everything into the yard.
Yeah, the Congdon Mansion in Duluth, the great big beautiful mansion, they have Tithonia. So you're in good company liking Tithonia, that mansion. You see, they plant it with things that would have been planted kind of in that era by those mansions. So yeah, Tithonia, that's wonderful. And of course, I always like to say we're in good gardening times because the plant breeders have produced so many wonderful things. New varieties. And when Mary and I were out at your place, we enjoyed seeing the different hydrangea varieties. And when we had our garden center, those did not exist. And so that was fun. We picked up a potentilla there. Let's see. Remind me the name.
Mandarin Tango.
Yes. It was, what caught me about that was, of course, potentillas are wonderful. And this one had kind of almost a little double flower. And kind of in a fascinating combination of yellow and oranges. And so I bet it's fun to provide some of those things to customers such as me that when you see it, it's like, wow. And so I bet it's been interesting to provide new things, hardy things. So how do you go about selecting what you offer?
I so many pour things. Over catalogs. This is all about reading and learning and videos and all the things so that I can hopefully provide the right plants for the right place. Because with our climate and our clay soil, many things don't work that in theory should. So the tags don't always mean what they say when they say, oh, well, we're zone 3. But typically because we're in the clay soil, like a dwarf Alberta spruce, zone 2, they hate it here. I love them, but they're not meant to be here. So what I try to do is we plant some things. I often tell people I basically vomit out a garden center in my own front lawn every year. And then I just take copious notes. And then I pour over any resources I can find. I lead on Adam Voles from Cheyenne Gardens a lot. He's an amazing person with a great garden center. And he's been incredibly helpful and kind to me. And he gives me tips on when I say, hey, what has been your experience with this plant? Have you had any, pluses or negatives? And all these wonderful people around town have really helped me by giving me honest answers on what they found successful and not. So that's one of the things I do when people talk about what do I do all winter. I am studying my butt off, Excel documents and all the things to try to make sure that what we offer will do well where we live, which is not always an easy task.
And I know for nursery stock or many of the bedding plant types of things, I know you need to order very soon. It isn't just ordered kind of right before the sailing season. How soon do you have to start getting in some of your orders?
Yeah, I've already ordered some stuff for 2027.
For 2027?
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to find some more rootstocks and other things for fruit. I have noticed a giant uptick in people trying small fruit as shrubs or smaller trees. So I'm working diligently on providing a very nice apricot tree, several of them up here, as well as some of these smaller fruits and stuff. So to find some of that, which isn't grown by the major nurseries, sometimes I have to order out up to a year and a half. So you aren't
just thinking about next season already. You're thinking about the following year.
Absolutely, because that's the way I could guarantee that I'll get the nice grafted plants if I'm not ready to be able to grow enough of them on my own. And someday I hope to be the person that controls the whole process. But for now, I lean on other people. So definitely up to several years out for some of the plants we're working on.
Sure, that's awesome. Do you start any of your bedding plants from seed? Or, many greenhouses get in little plugs started by big wholesale nurseries and then grow them on in your greenhouses. Do you start anything bedding type plants from seed yourself?
Absolutely. We usually start the heaters up March 1st. And at my own home, I have a neat little setup in my basement with glow lights, grow lights, and heating pads. And we start January 1st for some of our own plants. And then around March 1st, I'll transfer what I've grown in the basement to our hoop houses, which are then heated, and then just grow those up. So some of these plants are been babied for a long time, and it's sometimes sad for me to see them go.
Well, let's take a quick little break. When we come back, more with Luke Nygard from Nygard Nursery in Dilworth.
Hi, I'm Trisha Turinskis, host of the Vault podcast.
And I'm Jeremy Fugelberg, author of the investigative series Minnesota Vice. In that series, I took a deep dive into the true story of Casey Ramirez, a drug smuggler who tried to hide out and live it up in a small Minnesota town. What happened next led me to find out what happens to the soul of a town when it decides not to ask too many questions.
It was such a well-researched and interesting story. I wanted to bring Jeremy on to The Vault to talk about it. You can find that right now by going to the Vault podcast, wherever you listen, and looking for the episode titled The Cocaine King.
All right, we're back with Luke Nygard from Nygard Garden Center or Nygard Nursery?
Nygard Nursery.
Nygard Nursery out in Dilworth, out in the
Rail District.
The Rail District.
Yeah.
That's a neat name for that.
It is.
Of course, Dilworth
works.
is known for being a long-time railroad center.
Well, we talked about a little bit about your experience. You were a drummer in 32 Below, a really well-known local band for so long. How did you make that transition from being a musician and a touring musician to really putting in roots?
That's a jump.
Yeah, it's a jump.
All of a sudden becoming a
Yes.
garden center owner.
Yeah, and obviously you were living here in the area, but it's I think for some people, including myself, this is kind of maybe an unexpected career shift.
Absolutely. One of the neat things that happened to me was when I was on the road, I still had a beautiful home in Fargo. My wife and I had a nice North Fargo home, and she allowed me to put a giant garden in the back. And a garden has been something that I've always had everywhere I've moved, and it seems to just center me, and that's my home base, and it just makes me more comfortable. So I put in this beautiful backyard garden, and with the wonderful newness of Facebook at that time, I suppose, I started putting pictures up, and a local garden center got a hold of me, and they said, "Will you come and run our garden center?" And I thought, I'm not ready yet. And then as time went on, I thought, it's time. I'm ready. I love doing what I do, but I'm ready for the second act of my life, and I want to be home more. My wife and I were going to have a child. And so I called back and I said, "Is that opportunity still there?" And they said, "Absolutely." So
that's when I first met you, as a manager at that garden center.
Yeah, it was completely terrifying, and they took a risk on me. So what I did is I don't have a degree in any of this. I went and I started purchasing every book I could find. I found out what the colleges use for curriculum, and I started studying my butt off. And I just memorized a ton, and I worked really hard, and I was able to run that place for a couple of years. And as time went on, with my comfortability of being there, people started saying, "Oh my gosh, you got a nice place here." And that's when I said, "You know what? Go for it. Try this. You've run a business," which was the band.
Mm-hmm.
Go do this on your own. Give it a shot. And so my lovely wife, who's my biggest cheerleader and tolerates a ton, because as you know, being it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And she said, "Let's do it. This is your time. Let's go."
What are longer days? Being a musician, touring musician, or being owning your own nursery?
Oh gosh, the hours are just different.
Yeah.
So before I was up all night, driving and doing all the things that aren't the glamorous side of the band part, and now I'm up 4 a.m. until often there in between March and June, it's 4 a.m. till 11 at night.
Sweating in the middle of the night. Are the heaters going to keep up when the temperature's reaching 20 below, which you can do in March?
Yeah.
And yes.
Well, here we are in fall. What are some good things? What can we still plant here in September? And what things are you kind of seeing people still buying? And what things are people still interested in purchasing? What can we still get in the ground?
Fruit trees. It has been a wonderful season for fruit trees. I love selling apple trees to families. In town, I typically think you only need one. There's enough crab apples and other things like that because an apple tree needs 2 trees of different varieties to be pollinating. So I've had wonderful sales with fruit trees. And what's nice is the trees' needs are less now. So these are starting to shut down and get ready for dormancy. So instead of purchasing a tree for me in spring and taking care of it all summer long and watering it, now you do still have to water it, but you've eliminated the dog days of summer of care, which is a very nice thing when busy families are out and about. So it's a less scary time to plant, I would say, for some trees and shrubs right now. I'm getting ready to button up perennials at a certain point as we cool down. I think they need enough time for them to root out properly, but for trees and shrubs, I think there's quite a bit of planting time left.
Oh, there is. The month of September is great, and like you say, Luke, they root out. So planting now versus waiting till next spring, there's great advantage. That root will give it a good head start. The other thing that I enjoy shopping at garden centers is, even if a plant is the same price now as it was in spring, I'm usually getting a bigger plant because you've cared for it beautifully all summer long. I kept it watered, fertilized, and now it has all that summer growth. So for the same price, I'm getting a bigger plant.
That's a good point.
Even if something isn't on a sale price, I'm getting more for money
for it, yeah.
by buying and planting right now.
Absolutely.
So thank you for keeping everything in such good condition. You mentioned apple trees. What are a couple of your favorites or those that people have enjoyed?
Oh, as soon as my lovely wife said we're having a baby, I went and I got a chestnut crab.
Oh, those are wonderful.
That is,
John, have you even?
I don't think I know this. Yeah.
Chestnut crab. Crab apple. You think of this little tiny kind of soury type thing. Chestnut crab. I've often heard that is called, instead of a crab apple, an apple crab.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're decent size. Not as big as a full size apple, but those are sweet. They have a flavor that's all its own. Chestnut crab.
Yeah, almost pear overtones, I'd say. It's awesome. And it's a beautiful tree, incredibly hardy. Like Zone 2 tolerates the clay happily. It's just
wonderful for fresh eating right out of hand.
Does it
great
get
for lunch boxes?
Good flowers in the fall then, or in the spring too?
It's a gorgeous tree.
Flowering crab.
And what I like about that one is I have that one on its own rootstock. So many times when a person buys an apple tree, you can either have it on a grafted rootstock to keep it small, or on its own rootstock where it'll then become a much larger tree. But with some diligent cutting, I've maintained to keep a nice shape and size to it. But then I have that increased hardiness and root vigor. So on a bearing year, it's pretty amazing how much that thing will put out.
That's awesome. Now, of course, in the fall here, wonderful time for planting. Nurseries are busy selling things. Us consumers are busy planting. Now, what do you do with trees, shrubs, perennials that are left at the end of the season? Because usually, I know in our own experience, you don't sell down to the last pot.
In dreams, I will. But yes, you're exactly right.
What do you do with the material at the end of the season?
I will overwinter. So I have a process that I'm working through. Every year I take notes and I develop a better and better process. But essentially, I keep the plants all separated and then I freeze them like an ice cube. And when I know the temperatures are going to stay below freezing, then I have a designated spot where I lay down the trees and almost stack them like shingles. So I'll have a large mound of plants that I layer up. Then I cover with a fleece blanket type material, and then what they call panda fabric. So it's black on the underside and white on the outside. And that's incredibly important because that white will reflect the sun. So I don't want these plants heating up and trying to actively grow in times of warmth. So I essentially try to freeze the plants and keep them frozen until I know it's going to stay consistently warm enough to take them out of their doldrums.
Oh, that's awesome. It's kind of fun to see the behind the scenes. And we used to do similar when we had the garden center. That works very well.
Are there any events coming up that, like fall events or anything like that? Because again, with the rail district, there's a lot of kind of commingling between the businesses. And I was just wondering, do you guys have like a little pumpkin party or anything like that coming up?
Absolutely. We're going to have a fall fest. I believe it's Saturday, September 20th. We're going to have tons of fun kid activities. And that's one of the great things that we have out there is with the garden center, I have a lot of space. So with that space, that means room for kids to run around. And please let them come and run around. I have quartz rocks all over in my gravel beds, and please let them pick it, have fun. I just love it when the little shavers come out and have the time of their lives. So we will have a wonderful fall fest. I believe it's Saturday, September 20th, and we'll have tons of fun games and activities.
You have a Facebook page, or you're on social media, Instagram,
Absolutely.
Things like that. People can check it out there.
And when Mary and I were out at your garden center, we saw, and you showed us, you were doing some kind of some things for the future. So after we take a break, I'm curious for you to kind of describe a little bit. Don't want you to give away all your secrets, but to tickle us with some of the things that you're working on, and that'll be fun to talk about.
Can't wait.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
Okay, we're back again. And Luke, when Mary and I were out visiting your nursery, you showed us some interesting grafting that you were doing. I believe it was on some apricot trees. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I often mine Facebook to find out what people are doing with cool fruit trees. So I constantly am looking up Jim Walla, who is a North Dakota legend in the tree nursery business.
We need to get him on for a podcast.
He'd be great.
The amount of knowledge is in how freely and nicely he shares it and gives. He's such an incredible resource we have, much like Don Kinsler over here, that people just Google Don Kinsler and any questions you ever have, and there'll be a column from the wonderful Fargo Forum or Facebook that'll pop up, and he will answer. It's amazing what he's put out there for all of us to enjoy. So yes, I am. I'm growing some apricot trees. I've grafted them on a Manchurian rootstock, and I have found them from Jim Walla and his person that he knew well, that he directed me to, Bob Purvis, out in Idaho. So as soon as I sent Bob Purvis an email saying, I know Jim Walla, the doors were opened, and I have pages and pages of information from him for us to have really nice apricot trees in Fargo.
Now, there's a reason I don't have an apricot tree in our backyard. And I think you probably need 2 cultivars, don't you?
It helps for sure. Yeah,
it helps for good. There's a reason I don't. It is because I've just never found one that I thought was worth planting. So I'm really curious because you and I know Jim well. You guys are developing apricots that are well worth planting, and so I'm very interested in eventually seeing these on the market, because then I'll have an apricot tree in our backyard. So now, okay, so what is special about these apricot trees? Because I know you can there's an old moon gold and sun gold that have been around forever. So what's special about the ones you're looking at?
I am using the Prairie Hardy ones. I think they're a Manitoba introduction, I believe. So it's Westcott and Brookcott and Debbie's Gold and a few others. And so they flower later more reliably. There's still no givens yet, but we should get fruit set more often, and it's a hardy apricot for where we live. And I'm also testing out a Zard apricot that I'm very excited about that could be one of the next big things, I believe, for where we live. And Jim Walla also has one that he has done for a gentleman, and the name escapes me right now, but that is one that he is allowing me to try propagating for sales in the Fargo region.
You had an important statement there when you said later flowering. One of the problems with apricots is that they blossom, many of the varieties blossom too early. They start blooming early. They consistently get frozen by just spring frosts, and then they don't bear. So many of the varieties that were available would give you a fruit crop maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years. And so when you say later blossoming, they escape those normal frosts that we get in spring. And so that is a key to getting a consistent good apricot, because I don't want to wait every 10 years to get a
right.
I ain't getting any younger. I don't want to wait that long that long in between apricots. So this is fascinating that what you're doing can get some good apricot varieties on the market.
That's what the Zard specifically is. I'm very hopeful for. And we're doing some other neat stuff too with a Siberian sea peach seedling. I found some neat grower out of Wisconsin, and he's done an improvement. So over the last 5 years, he's consistently frozen them harder and harder. And the ones that survive, he's made improvements on the fruit quality. So I found him, and I have 100 of those growing in a unique and interesting gravel bed culture I'm working on as well right now. So I'm hoping to have some.
If you need a test yard for any of those peaches that you're working on, maybe John could find a space. I'm sure I could find a little space if you're looking.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I know those. That propagation material is precious, but that's fascinating. You see, these things, you're looking into the future for all of us. for getting some of these things. That's unique. And that's unique among, plantsmen in this area to be working on that material for the future.
I just would need to back up here. Did you say you were growing these in gravel?
Correct. Yes.
How does that?
Tell us about that system. Growing it in gravel.
That doesn't necessarily make sense to me.
When we were out there at your garden center, you showed us these big totes, and you can describe it. These great big containers. You're growing things in gravel and pumice and things instead of like potting mix or soil. So tell us about that.
Yes, in all my studying, I found University of Minnesota, Gary Johnson has done an amazing job of setting up these community gravel beds where they take a bare root tree you can purchase for much less than a containerized tree in the spring, and they do what's called healing in. So they have these monstrous gravel beds and they heal these trees in, and then they put a sprinkler system on them, water them, and that allows them to plant out right away when they have enough people and enough of the right situation for them to plant in spring. Because as you know, it can be a stinker to find the right time.
How deep is the gravel? Deep enough to take the root system?
Yeah,
I suppose?
Typically 18 inches. And why they do that, there's a couple neat reasons, is that the top 3 to 4 inches of gravel will will dry out. So if you have it buried deeper, the root system will develop much better down lower where the water holding capacity of the gravel is. But then you have the 4 inches above that nice root structure that is also keeping the trees from blowing over in the wind. So it's kind of a multi-use effect that really keeps these going well.
So now why are they planting these bare root trees in a gravel bed instead of in soil?
It develops in an amazing fibrous root system. The few I've pulled out of the pumice just to check is incredible on how different it is than when I plant one of my beautiful containerized trees. I murder the root system. Like, people become uncomfortable when they watch me plant a tree because these trees become pot bound in these containers. So the reason for having them in these large, what's called a grow bag, it's a fabric grow bag that allows the roots to grow into the fabric, and then it root prunes them, because soon as they grow through that bag into the air, they stop. So it creates a really dense and fibrous root system so that when I transplant these trees, hopefully in the next year or two, they will go through much less shock. They'll have much more vigor and strength right out of the gate. And also with this, they have shown that you can plant a bare root tree when it's in full leaf. You still have to be careful with it.
That fascinates me because, bare root, fine in the early spring, places that offer bare root, they keep them under refrigeration, kind of like, and then it's dormant, no leaves. You take it home, plant it, leaves out. Okay, but the fascinating thing about this, and there's advantages to that bare root because, you can feather out the roots. They aren't all circled around in a pot. Okay, so there's some advantages to bare root. They don't have the shelf life. They can't sell them all season. But so this concept, it's growing in a gravel bed, good fibrous root. The tree starts growing, full leaf. So now the concept of taking that tree out of that full leaf, the roots are there, kind of essentially bare root, and they found that works.
Yeah. They've had different successes, like bur oak really don't like it, but some of the other trees, honey locusts, the root systems go absolutely wild in this gravel. So what they do is some different municipalities that have adopted this, they'll dip it in a hydrogel solution that kind of keeps moisture trapped around that root so that when they do plant it, the shock is lessened and then they have adequate moisture right away. But it's wild to see one of these big, 1.25 inch caliper trees come out of this gravel bag and you can lift it with one arm. Whereas when I plant an 1.25 inch caliper tree, I'm on a dolly and the thing weighs 150 pounds and I'm sweating and I'm just like tired.
Because, the plastic nursery pot revolutionized the nursery trade. All of a sudden, instead of just offering stock bare root in the spring, you could now pot it up in the plastic nursery pot. It would have the shelf life all summer long. You could sell all summer long and into the fall. But the disadvantage is those roots very quickly are all going in a circle. And when you go to plant that, if you don't murder the roots, like you said, Luke, those roots keep going in a circle for the next 20 years. And all of a sudden the tree topples over because the roots didn't go outward or they strangle the tree. And so very important to murder those roots, like I said, pull them outward, cut them off. But so the idea now of doing these in gravel beds, so the roots grow, or big gravel containers, so the roots are growing outward. But then you also tell us a little more about that pot instead of a plastic pot.
Yeah.
Was it described as kind of a
It's a fabric, yeah.
Fabric.
It's so there's a couple versions where there's a natural fiber,
heard of those.
And there's a recycled plastic, and I get those out of Oregon Root Pouch, and I love those for planting tomatoes in and stuff like that as well. They're a very wonderful pot for any kind of vegetable or herb gardening, but I use those for trees, and so that's that root entrapment. So that's what's so interesting is if the roots actually hit the sides of that pot, instead of turning and circling, they'll grow into that. And as soon as they hit the air through that material, then they stop, and then it'll encourage more branching of fibrous roots.
So the roots are no longer circling around.
Yeah.
And then also when you use the gravel or the pumice as a media, then it's a more fibrous root system.
All the air and the nutrients that are trapped, I use a pumice and gravel mixture, and that pumice helps because it lightens the heaviness of the gravel, like what you talked about with the hydrangeas, all that weight bearing down on top, and then it holds the water. And I do feed them some fertilizer, and I found quite a bit of success actually growing a tree instead of just holding it. So there's a neat person in Grand Rapids, Colorado, that has had great success with Leica clay balls, and he has done like neat hydroponic tree growth, and he plants for the city, and there's all these wonderful people doing different things, and I'm hopeful that what I'm up to continues on this really neat tradition of just trying some things and having some success.
Well, I saw when we were out to your place, I saw how healthy those trees were that were growing in that. And it's kind of unique. We're used to seeing trees and shrubs in potting mix, soil. And it was so unique to see these in gravel and how healthy they were. And it's amazing. I've dug enough these great big holes in clay that I'm tired of that. It would be awesome to lift this tree up out of that gravel mix and just plant it without having to struggle and circle the roots and all. So I love that you're doing these cutting edge things.
You talked earlier about when you're talking about what do you do in the winter, and one of the things that you said you layer your trees like shingles, and then you cover them. Do you do that? How do you do that with these that are in something like gravel will not hold its form like if
you topple that over, the gravel
exactly
would roll
right.
out.
And so what I do with these in a container tree, you try to actually minimize the amount of space for that tree when they're surrounded by soil. Often it's a bark and sand mix. With these, I'm actually growing them in a much larger bag to encourage that larger root growth. So with that 18-inch depth, all I have to do is use my articulated loader and put all these trees together, and it kind of creates its own mound. So instead of laying these ones down, great question, I will just move them all together and then maybe put a line of mulch around them just to protect them from the freeze-thaw cycles. But for the most part, the city of Fargo and many other municipalities have had great success leaving them in the beds all winter.
Wow.
Well, that's fascinating.
That's great. What else do you got to do for you getting, we talked a little bit that in winter, you do that, getting ready for winter, and then you spend a lot of time pouring through the catalogs. What else as a nursery person do you do throughout the winter?
Fix and clean and do all the things,
like a farmer.
100%. There's always machine maintenance, sharpening my shovels. That's one of the great things. Like I tell people with our clay, please bring your shovel in. I'm happy to sharpen it. I have an angle grinder and some safety glasses, and it makes a world of difference. So just maintenance. We do everything we can to be frugal so we can keep our prices down, and it is a never ending amount of work.
Oh, I bet. I'm sure it's just constant.
Yeah, and it's exciting. And it is. It's fascinating to hear what kind of goes on behind the scenes. Because when us customers come out and shop and see everything beautiful, greenhouses filled, trees well displayed, well grown, and of course, many of us know there's a whole lot that goes in behind the scenes to make that wonderful experience happen for us. And to me, the bottom line is what I plant, I want it to grow. And of course,
100%.
that depends on me doing the right things and planting and all that and care, but it also depends on getting good nursery stock. So I really value the locally owned garden centers.
You said that you're already buying or purchasing, putting orders in for 2027, but in the more immediate future, what are you looking forward to in 2026? For the summer, spring and summer and fall of 2026?
Honeyberries. I have finally found a good supplier, and I have been short the last 2 years, and all these fine folks have wanted to buy honeyberries from me. And there's so many interesting varieties that are out from Japan and the University of Saskatchewan, who does a great job with a lot of the breeding. So my big push next year is I'm going to have all the honeyberries for all the people.
You know, I always say I'm the perfect test subject for most of this because I've made every mistake there is. I've got two wonderful honeyberries. Wonderful. I should say they're growing wonderfully. They're about 6 years old, 5 feet tall. Not a single fruit on them.
No way.
Yes.
And you're the man.
Because
shame on those plants is what I say.
Well, this is why I don't go to the national chains, because I went to the national chains. They were cheap, but the two different varieties are not two that will pollinate each other.
Oh, shoot.
So, well, they look nice.
Yeah.
I just got no fruit. So you see what I mean? I've made every mistake there is. So you're mentioning, and of course, honeyberry need the right two different varieties to pollinate. And of course, nurserymen handle the ones that will pollinate. So anyway, I've got two wonderful, they just don't have any fruit. And so I'll be out to visit, Luke.
Wonderful.
How late in the year will you keep the store open out there?
I did sell Christmas trees last year, so I was open until Christmas Eve. I'm on the fence about it this year. But for sure, we'll do sales of plants into October, at weather providing. I don't want to sell something I don't think will do well. But for sure into October, and depending on if I keep getting asked about Christmas trees again. So it's starting to get me to think I should do it again.
You'll have to make the decision soon, I suppose.
Like in a week.
Yeah. You got to get those orders in too. Those are much more immediate there.
Well, this has been great to visit with you, Luke.
This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if people haven't been out there yet, go out and check it out. It's out in Dilworth, on the west end of Dilworth, in the rail district. It's a fun little area.
East end of Dilworth.
East end of Dilworth.
Yeah, I
we
said
keep
west
saying
also.
west. We keep saying west, yes.
Well, we're from the west here. We're west of Dilworth.
West and western Minnesota.
Go to
we
the
think of
east
that.
side of Dilworth.
Yeah. But go out and check it out. It's a really fun place. And you said you've got an event coming up in September, kind of a pumpkin party.
Yeah, a really fun fall fest with tons of activities and games and all the great things for the kiddos and parents too. And please come visit. It still looks great. Our hydrangeas and hydrangea trees are blooming and they look unbelievable now. So you don't have to buy a darn thing. I really encourage people just to come, walk around, take pictures, plant later, have tons of fun. Just when I see somebody walk into our tree line and their shoulders droop down and they just start relaxing, I know we're starting to be set up to be what the dream is of a beautiful garden center.
Yeah, the fall, you don't think you want to plant in the fall, but it's a great time to take notes and to start thinking about what you want to do next year.
Yeah, so thanks again, Luke, for all you do to make gardening better for all of us in the area.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks again for coming by.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And Don, if people have questions for you about hydrangeas or anything else that they have questions about, or if they just want to show off to you some of their big successes this year, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I'd love to see what's doing well for everyone, as well as any questions. Donald.Kinsler, Kinzler, at ndsu.edu. And thanks everyone for listening. And gosh, Luke, this has been a pleasure. And thank you, John, as always.
All right, we'll talk to you next week.